working on a comparable project, but kind of looking at different things. And we're trying to do it in a very integrated way with the farming community, so that the sort of questions that we expect to come up, and quite a few have come up already and we've barely started, that we want to be able to ensure that we enable you to run with us, and so we can kind of learn as we're going along, rather than sort of present a big pile of data at the end. So this is kind of what we're looking to do. We've got a fairly large-scale project funded under the SARIC scheme. This is the Sustainable Arable Research Industry Club. And in essence, we're looking at helping to restore soil quality through reintegration of Leys into an arable system. So it's a short-term system, very much looking at improvement of the soil. Not an obvious thing that a lot of arable farmers are particularly keen on, and the concept of sheep being sort of mixed in is also not necessarily as exciting as some farmers would wish it to be. So this was kind of the underlying questions that we had. We know that we've got some degradation in soil quality, that continuous cropping, particularly ploughing and short rotations, is contributing to this, and there are problems associated with the sort of gradual upward movement of blackgrass and other various things. And so this is the team that we've brought together. Jonathan Leeks, our leader, but we've got a whole set of soil experts looking at different components from the sort of micro scale right through to the catchment scale. So just to say precisely what we're up to, we're going to introduce two different types of Leys. So either a fairly simple normal grass with a bit of clover, and we're looking at introducing it for either 2 years or 3 years, and we're going to set that against a much more complex herbal ley, and the one that we're using in this instance has been put together by Cotswold Seeds. It's called their 4-year long-term herbal ley. And then we can introduce mowing or actual grazing into the treatment, so that if you're an arable farmer and you really can't stand the concept of having sheep on the farm, albeit in fairly small quantities and for a short time, then we can look at mowing as an alternative to see if we can get the benefits from these systems. And then to look at a range of things. I can't go into the full detail, but we will obviously look at the yields of the following crop following the Leys, also animal health if they're being used, soil structure, as many things as we can possibly manage, and then of course economic value and the cost benefits that we're getting from this. And as I said, we can look at this from a catchment scale to micro scale and do it in a participatory way. So we're certainly going to measure the obvious things that you'd expect: soil nutrients, pH, visual assessment, which some of you will have come across, things like earthworms, which have been covered very ably by colleagues earlier this morning, soil microbial communities as much as we can manage, and of course organic matter and aggregate stability, soil strength, porosity, bulk density. So they quickly said, but they are slow to manage and to measure. And the key questions: so are the herbal Leys potentially going to be better in various ways than a simple sort of grass clover ley? You know, can we actually accelerate those expectations that we get in improving soil qualities and structure right down through the horizons? Can we accelerate that by using these more complex species mixtures? And as I said, is grazing preferable to mowing, or we definitely gain benefit from them? And ideally, we know from data that we've gathered so far that 3 years you really get a big step up in the quality that you get from the second year to the third year. So if we use these complex herbal Leys, can we perhaps accelerate at the point that we can bring it down sometimes to a 2-year ley? So, you know, we're going to look at very obvious things. We're going to look at green area index, VEST, the visual assessment. This is literally looking at a spade full of soil and seeing what the quality is like. Various people have used pictures like this, but when I ask farmers, quite a lot know it can be done and yet haven't as yet tried it. So, you know, you can get a very different type of structure depending on whether you've got a poor soil type, and certainly that second one was an indication of one that could definitely do with a bit of action and worm counts, of course. We're doing this fairly large scale in a sort of split field. So this is our site that's already now going. We've got the grazing, we've got the herbal ley, and we've got sorry, let's go through that again. So we've got the herbal ley on one side, part of it is grazed and part of it is mown, and then we've got the grass ley on that side, again, part of which is mown and part grazed. And then down the bottom, running right through the experiment, which will run over 4 years, a conventional tillage, so that we can compare that. And that's it in the 3rd year. The whole thing now will have moved into conventional arable again, and we'll be able to look at all of those different combinations through that soil. So if you haven't come across this herbal ley mixtures, they're pretty complex. I haven't quite got all the species here. As I say, Cotswold Seed put this together. But within that, we've got things like a range of different clover, ryegrass type mixtures. We've got these various different herbs, and we've got the sort of things that you get in the cover crop mixtures. And you've got a whole range of these different soil penetration types. So you've got Samfoin, which is one of the sort of record breakers that will go down 2 meters in some soils, up to the very fine rooted ones that will only go into the sort of the topsoil and the mid subsoil type areas. And we will be looking to see how these will penetrate and how these roots will develop. And of course, different seasons, different species, it's all going to be pretty different. So we're going to have a whole heap of data to work our way through. I said that this is collaborative. We've got 5 other farmers that are working with us, and this is an example of one of the other sites where we won't have exactly the same pattern, but we'll have, as far as we can, we'll have it repeated across a number of sites. And we'll look at those things, like I said, landscape effects, looking at the impacts of flood, pollution, and diffuse pollution in particular, and whether these type of systems can minimise the impact and the risks that you get from that. So this is what it looked like September drilling, and this was just a few weeks ago, so it's already going well. And that's it, it's sort of fine, and that's the 21st of November. In fact, I've taken that photograph. This is not on our site, so this was from a picture that I've borrowed from Cotswold Seeds, so you can see this in the spring when it's really getting going. And finally, in the summer, you've got this fairly complex mixed sward coming through. There's where all our study sites are. And like Lizzie said, we're really keen to engage with as many of you as possible. So we have our sort of our key farmers, if you like, that are already working with us, but we're extremely keen to engage with you in workshops that will be starting from spring next year. So do come along and talk to me or any of the team that I mentioned earlier. Thanks to our funders, and that's how you can contact me.